It was a late summer night, the kind where the air is thick, almost suffocating, but you don't notice it at first. I'd been on the road for hours, the monotonous drone of the highway playing tricks on my mind. My name is Matt, and I've always been the kind of person who loves a good road trip. It's been years since I took one by myself, but I thought it'd be good for the soul. Maybe I just needed to get away from it all, or maybe I was running from something I couldn't name. Anyway, by the time I hit mile marker 167, I knew I wouldn't make it to the next city. The engine of my car was starting to sputter, and there wasn't a single gas station in sight for miles. The night was growing colder, the highway dimmer, until finally I saw it, a small, rundown motel, the kind of place you'd only stop at if you had no other option. The flickering neon sign was my beacon of hope. I pulled into the parking lot, gravel crunching under the tires. The place looked like it hadn't seen a guest in years. There was no one at the front desk when I walked in, just a bell that made a hollow sound when I rang it. Seconds later, a man appeared from the back, his clothes a little too worn for comfort. "You need a room?" he asked in a raspy voice, not bothering with pleasantries. "Yeah, just one night," I replied, trying to hide the unease creeping up my spine. He handed me the key, his fingers cold, his eyes darting around like he was trying to avoid something. I didn't ask any questions, just paid and took the key. Room 13. The room was just as you'd expect. A bed with stained sheets, a flickering light overhead, and an overpowering smell of something I couldn't quite place. But I was tired, and at that point, I just needed to sleep. I locked the door behind me and threw my bag on the floor. There was something oddly unsettling about the place, though. It wasn't just the shabby condition. It felt like something was watching me. Something in the corners, in the walls, in the creaks of the floorboards. I tried to ignore the feeling, but then the lights went out. At first, I thought it was a power outage, but then I heard it. The sound of footsteps outside my door. Soft, deliberate. I wasn't alone. I stood still, my breath shallow, not wanting to make a sound. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. My heart was racing, pounding against my chest like it was trying to break free. I debated whether to open the door, whether to call out and see who was there. But something in my gut told me that wouldn't be a good idea. Then came a knock. Not a normal knock, though. It was slow, deliberate. 3 sharp raps, then silence. My hand instinctively reached for the lock, but I froze. It was too quiet. Too still. There was no way someone would be standing out there waiting for me to answer without making a sound. Suddenly, the air in the room grew colder, the temperature dropping like a stone into the abyss. I could see my breath, my fingers trembling as I pulled the blanket tighter around me. I turned my attention to the window, hoping to see something, anything that could explain this. The curtains were drawn, but I could still see a sliver of light from the flickering neon outside. The shadows moved like they were alive, dancing on the walls. That's when I heard it again. A whisper. Soft like a breeze. Room 13. I spun around, my eyes darting to the door. The knock was gone, but the whisper lingered. It felt like it came from the walls themselves, like the motel was breathing with me, feeding off my fear. I took a deep breath and reached for the door handle. My mind was screaming at me to run, but my body moved on its own accord. My hand gripped the cold metal, and before I could stop myself, I twisted the knob and swung the door open. No one was there. Just the empty, silent hallway. The air was thick with dust, and the only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning far down the corridor. I stepped out cautiously, my footsteps muffled against the faded carpet. I didn't know what I was looking for, an answer, an explanation, a way out. But as I walked further down the hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following me. The door to room 12 was slightly ajar. I froze as I passed it, a chill running down my spine. There was a faint sound coming from inside. Low, guttural, like someone or something was breathing heavily. I was about to turn away when I heard a loud thud, followed by the unmistakable sound of someone or something dragging itself across the floor. Without thinking, I reached out and pushed the door open, my heart pounding in my ears. What I saw inside made my blood run cold. The room was darker than the rest of the motel, and the only light came from a flickering bulb above the bathroom door. The smell was suffocating, like rotting wood and old, stale air. At first, I didn't see anything unusual, but then I heard it again. That dragging sound, slow and heavy, like something was struggling to move. I stepped forward, my pulse racing, trying to see into the dim light, and that's when I saw it. In the far corner of the room, a figure was crouched low to the ground. Its back was to me, and it was dragging something across the floor. Something that was too heavy to be just a pile of clothes. something that looked like a body. I couldn't breathe, my legs frozen to the spot. It wasn't human. The figure was too hunched, its limbs too long, too thin. The bones in its arms jutted out unnaturally, and its head, its face, it wasn't right. It turned slightly, just enough for me to catch a glimpse of its face in the weak light. Its eyes were black, no whites, just endless voids of darkness. And its mouth, it was stretched too wide, like it was never meant to be that way. My stomach churned. The air around me felt like it was pressing down, suffocating me. I wanted to scream, but the sound wouldn't come. My feet were still stuck to the ground as if something invisible was holding me in place. The figure's head jerked toward me suddenly, its mouth splitting open in a grin that stretched way too far. It let out a low, guttural noise, a growl that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I didn't wait for it to move. I turned and ran, my footsteps echoing through the hallway as I scrambled back toward my room. The motel seemed to stretch forever, the walls narrowing, the floorboards creaking louder with each step. I slammed the door behind me and locked it, my breathing ragged. But as soon as I turned around, my blood ran cold again. The figure wasn't far behind. Its eyes, those hollow, black eyes, stared at me from the window, watching me. There was no way it could have gotten here so quickly. The windows didn't even open. I stumbled back, my mind racing. What the hell was going on? Why hadn't anyone else heard or seen it? Why was it only coming for me? The silence in the room was deafening. I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were closing in. That whatever that thing was, it was watching me, waiting for me to make a mistake. And then, as if the night couldn't get worse, the power cut out again. Couldn't see a thing. The room was pitch black, the only light coming from the faint glow of the neon sign outside, casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. I fumbled for my phone, but when I turned it on, the screen flickered once and went dead. Panic started creeping in. That's when I heard it, the soft shuffle of feet, like something dragging itself along the floor. It was coming from the bathroom. I slowly backed away from the sound, my heart hammering in my chest. I didn't know what to do. There was no way I was staying here another second. But the door was locked, and I had no idea if there was anyone around to help me. The motel was so isolated. Then, a noise broke the silence. A thud, followed by another, and then the unmistakable sound of scratching. Something was clawing at the walls, at the door. I could feel it vibrating beneath my feet, like the building itself was alive and in pain. I grabbed the chair near the desk and wedged it under the door handle, just in case. Felt like a weak attempt, but it was all I had. Suddenly, the scratching stopped. A cold shiver ran down my spine as the air seemed to grow even colder, like the life was being sucked out of the room. Then I heard it, the whisper, that same voice that had called to me earlier. Room 13. It hissed. It was coming from the wall. No, not the wall. It was coming from inside the wall. My mind screamed for me to leave, but my body refused to move. I just stood there, paralyzed with terror, listening to the voice getting closer, growing louder. Room 13. You shouldn't have stayed. I could feel the weight of its words sinking into me, wrapping around my mind like a vice. I thought about the man at the front desk, the one who had handed me the key. He had looked at me strangely, like he knew something was wrong but didn't want to say it. Had he known what I was walking into? Was I the latest victim? Or had I been brought here for something else entirely? The whisper continued, louder now, almost mocking. And then it stopped. A silence fell, but it wasn't peaceful. It was a suffocating, thick silence that made every hair on my body stand on end. I didn't want to turn around. I didn't want to look at the window, but something compelled me. Slowly, I turned, and there it was again. The face. It was pressed against the window, so close that I could see every grotesque detail. The long, twisted fingers clawing at the glass, the skin stretched too thin over the bones, the wide, too long mouth that opened impossibly wide to reveal row upon row of sharp, jagged teeth. It wasn't just staring at me anymore. It was smiling. And then the window shattered. The glass shattered in a burst of sound that made my ears ring. I staggered backward, the fragments of the window scattered across the floor like sharp, jagged teeth. My heart was in my throat, and all I could think about was getting out of there, out of this room, out of this place, before whatever that thing was could get in. But then, through the hole in the window, I saw it, its face, its twisted features staring back at me impossibly close, like it had been waiting for me to make a mistake. I wanted to scream, but my voice was caught in my throat. I looked down at the floor, at the sharp shards of glass beneath my feet. But it was too late. I felt the air around me shift, the temperature had dropped even further, and the shadows in the room seemed to grow, stretching toward me like they were alive. I turned to run, but the door was already open. The chair I had wedged under the knob was gone, and standing in the doorway was the thing, its long, bony fingers gripping the frame as it peered into the room, its eyes locked on mine. It didn't move. It didn't make a sound. It just watched me, grinning that impossibly wide grin. I stumbled back, my legs weak, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The only thing I could think of was to get away, to get out of the room, to find a way to escape this nightmare. But no matter how fast I ran, no matter how far I tried to go, I felt like I was trapped in a maze, like the walls were closing in. The thing took a step forward, and that's when I heard a voice. A real voice. A human voice. "Matt." I froze, turning toward the sound. It was the man from the front desk. He stood in the hallway, looking calm, almost detached, as if he were watching some kind of strange play unfold. "Don't run," he said, his voice eerily calm. "It's already too late." I didn't know what he meant by that, but I didn't have time to figure it out. The thing in the doorway took another step, then another, and then it lunged. I didn't even have time to scream. Everything went black. I don't know how long I was unconscious. When I came to, I was lying on the cold, hard floor of room 13, the taste of blood in my mouth. My head was spinning, and my limbs felt heavy, like they were no longer my own. I tried to move, but my body refused to obey. I could still hear that thing, the dragging, scraping sound, growing louder with every passing second. I forced myself to sit up, my vision blurry. My hands trembled as I wiped the blood from my face, trying to gather my bearings. I wasn't in the room anymore. The walls around me had changed. The faded wallpaper had peeled away, revealing cold concrete beneath it. The floor was wet, no, not wet, sticky. It was like the entire place was soaked in something thick and dark. And the smell was worse now, stronger, more pungent. It was the scent of rot, of decay. The air felt suffocating, as if the very room was choking me. Then I saw it. It was standing in the corner, just outside the flickering light's reach. The thing. Its eyes, those voids of darkness, were fixed on me, unblinking. Its body was more twisted now, more wrong. Its skin was pale, stretched tight over its bones, and its limbs had grown longer, thinner. It was crouched low, just waiting, watching me with that twisted grin. I wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't come. My throat was too tight, too dry. I could feel it. It was closing in on me, tightening its grip on my mind. The man at the front desk, he was gone. I couldn't see him anywhere. The hallway was empty. But there was something else. A soft whisper coming from the walls. From the ceiling. From the very floor beneath me. Room 13. It wasn't just a voice anymore. It was everywhere. It was in my head. I managed to force myself to my feet, stumbling toward the door. My breath came in shallow gasps, my hands slick with sweat. I didn't care what was outside anymore. I just needed to get out of this room. This motel. But as I reached for the door handle, it clicked. It locked. From the outside. I turned back to face the creature, my heart in my throat. It was closer now, its sharp, ragged breath filling the room. I could hear the scrape of its claws against the floor as it crawled toward me. Its mouth opened wide, impossibly wide. I backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The walls were closing in. The air was thick with a suffocating darkness that I couldn't escape. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it. A figure in the hallway. A man standing just outside the room, staring at me. His eyes, empty, hollow, the same as the creature's, locked onto mine. "Help me," I whispered, but the words barely escaped my lips. The figure didn't move. Didn't speak. I realized too late that I wasn't the one being watched. I was the one being hunted. The creature lunged. I didn't even have time to react. Its long, twisted arms reached out, fingers like claws, and it grabbed me with a strength I couldn't even comprehend. My body went limp in its grip as it pulled me toward its gaping mouth. The stench of death, of rot, filled my nostrils, making me gag. Its teeth scraped against my skin, cold and sharp like they were designed to tear through flesh. I fought back, struggling against the thing's grasp, but it was too strong. My vision blurred as I tried to pry its fingers off, but it was no use. I was going to die here, in this godforsaken motel, with no one around to hear me scream. Then suddenly the pressure on me loosened. The thing's grip faltered for a moment and I fell to the ground, gasping for air. I didn't waste any time. I scrambled to my feet and ran, bolting toward the door, praying that somehow, someway, it would open. But the door didn't budge. I pounded on the door with all my strength, screaming for help, but no one came. The hallway was silent, the shadows stretching long and ominous behind me. I could feel the creature closing in, its footsteps heavy and deliberate. And then I heard it again, the whisper. Room 13, it wasn't just a voice anymore. It was a chorus echoing from every corner of the motel. From the walls. From the floor. From the very air itself. The motel wasn't just alive, it was feeding on me, on my fear, my desperation. I could feel it closing in, surrounding me, pulling me into its darkness. I turned around, expecting to see the creature, but instead I saw something worse. The man from the front desk stood at the end of the hallway, watching me with those empty, hollow eyes. He didn't move. Didn't speak. He just stood there, as if waiting for something. Then his mouth stretched into a smile. A wide, twisted grin. And I knew that this motel wasn't just a place. It was a trap. A place for people like me. People who wandered in, looking for a room to stay, never realizing that they were already being consumed. I tried to move, to run, but my body wouldn't obey. My limbs were stiff, paralyzed by the terror that gripped me. I could feel the darkness pulling me down, dragging me toward the floor. The last thing I saw was the man's smile, his eyes gleaming with that awful emptiness, and the creature looming just behind him, its face twisted in that grotesque, wide grin. And then, nothing. I woke up, but not in the way you'd expect. There was no bright light, no warm sensation of safety. Instead, it was as if I had been reborn into a nightmare. The air was thick, heavy, and stale. My body felt wrong, like it didn't belong to me anymore. I was lying on the cold concrete floor, but it wasn't room 13. The walls around me were cracked, the ceiling low and oppressive. The dim, flickering light overhead cast long shadows, distorting the shapes of everything in the room. The faint smell of rot lingered in the air, and the taste of metal still coated my tongue. I tried to move, but it felt like my limbs were being weighed down by chains. I couldn't feel my fingers or my toes, just the numbness spreading through my body like I had been asleep for far too long. And then I remembered. The creature, the whispers, the man at the front desk. Room 13. My breath caught in my throat as I tried to sit up. But that's when I heard it. Soft, deliberate footsteps echoing from the darkness. It was a sound I would never forget, because it wasn't just the creature's claws scraping the floor. It was something else. Something familiar. I turned my head slowly, my heart thudding painfully in my chest. And that's when I saw it. The man. The one from the front desk. But he wasn't the same anymore. His eyes, those black, hollow voids, were still there, but his body, it had changed. His skin was pale, stretched too thin over his bones. His mouth, still grinning that twisted grin, was open wide, and behind him I saw it, the creature. Its eyes locked onto mine, cold and unblinking. But something was different now. Something was wrong in a way I couldn't quite understand. The man raised his hand, pointing at me, and I felt the air around me shift like the very atmosphere was pulling me toward them. I was rooted to the spot, unable to move, unable to escape. The darkness closed in, tightening around me. "Welcome to room 13, the man said, his voice hollow like it was coming from deep within the earth. "This is where you belong now." The creature in the shadows stepped forward, its grin widening, revealing rows of jagged teeth that seemed to grow longer with each passing second. It stepped closer to me, its eyes gleaming with hunger, with something else. Something familiar. I realized too late that the thing I had been running from wasn't just the creature. It wasn't just the darkness. It was me. I was never meant to leave. I was never meant to survive. This motel, this place, it had claimed me. It had claimed us all. And as the creature loomed over me, its breath hot and foul against my face, I understood. I wasn't the one who was trapped. The motel was.